what kind of diseases.
We had tests today.
They have had their COVID, so they're good to go, and we're vaccinated. So let's start off.
Good deal. I got my second.
Everybody, welcome to 3+1 the Livecast, where tonight you see Zack and Tracey together again, like COVID-19 never happened. You know what? We are joined today by Jordan Simone, who is a writer and a model and an activist. And so, Jordan, one thing, we actually did a podcast before COVID-19, and that kind of is what transitioned us over into a livecast format. And we actually always recorded together. Like, guests would come to my house. Tracey would drive all the way to the house, and we would record. So this is the first time that we've been together really since COVID-19 in terms of actually doing it. So it's great to be here. And we're not only here, we're here with a great guest, Jordan Simone. Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. You know, Jordan, I found you on TikTok. And your TikToks were absolutely inspiring. And so the whole entire purpose of our format is to gain the perspectives of various generations, specifically generations, and to amplify people of color. So my question for you is, what motivates your particular brand of activism?
Yeah, so I have always been really involved in education and educating others. And I think that when I first made my TikTok, while this was not intentionally my goal, it's something that definitely found me. And so like I made a TikTok and it went kind of viral and it led to a lot of questions by other people. And I was like, oh, well, people have questions. I have answers. I'll answer their questions. And it very quickly became like my whole platform was centered around teaching people what they didn't know about like activism and being an ally and what intersectionality looked like. And so now it's really what I love to do and what I spend a lot of time doing.
Jordan, you say that it wasn't what was your original hope? Like when you first started out on the TikTok platform, what did you envision to be your purpose on that app?
Yeah, so I wanted to do makeup videos and like those cute transitions that people do, maybe pick up some modeling tips as I look to branch into modeling. And I just there was this TikTok trend going around called No Nuance November. And I had like maybe 100 followers. And I was like, I'll just do a little No Nuance November. Like it probably won't go anywhere. It's cool. And it definitely went somewhere.
So you went from a couple hundred followers to hundreds of thousands of followers, really because of No Nuance November. Tell the audience, what were some of the no nuance truths that you revealed?
So the first one I made was about like the Black community specifically. And I said, hi. And I said different things like, we need to talk about the way that Black men treat Black women and vice versa, and what that relationship looks like. We need to talk about our relationship with the church and how that works with, oh my gosh, I forgot the word for it. Homophobia, how it works with homophobia. I talked about why we call our children fast when they're little. And I'm like, but they're a child. So are they really fast? Or are we just sexualizing children in an attempt to keep them safe? And I made one and it did pretty well. I think it got a couple 100,000 views. And I was like, wait. If y'all think I have things to say about my community, I have things to say about you fake activists out there. I have real thoughts on that one. And that one did really well. And everybody was like, oh, I never thought about like performative activism being posting a black square on Instagram and doing nothing else. And I was like, I mean, if you did nothing else, then all you did was clog up my hashtag in which we were using for actual resources. So yeah. And then people were like, oh, well, how do I make my activism not performative? And I was like, well, you'd have to actually do something. They were like, what do we do? And so I really took off from there, and people had asked things like, how do I not speak over Black voices while uplifting them? Or like people say, you need to learn from Black people, and yet I'm told to not ask the nearest Black person. What does that mean? And so like breaking down all of those questions that I thought were pretty straightforward, but apparently are super not, and how those different questions bleed into other forms of activism. So not just Black Lives Matter, but what does it mean for the body positivity movement? What does it mean for the LGBTQ community? What does it mean for disabled communities. Like, what does our activism look like in terms of including all people who need activism? So yeah.
That's dope. I've never heard of No Nuance November. Can you?
It's new. It was a TikTok hashtag.
Yeah, it was just like a silly TikTok trend where they had like really chaotic music in the background, and then you just like drop some truths really quick. And if you didn't elaborate, you didn't expand on it, it was just like drop your truth and go.
But but even just now, you said some things that I really think a lot of people are still nuanced about. They're unaware of, right? So that and this has been. You were invited in a series of interviews that we've done, where we talk about, where we're really digging deeply into what it really means to be an ally and what role we should all play in this work that we're engaged in. And the two of us, we've been having an ongoing debate. Really, this is the third week in a row where, you know, and it really started with Amanda Seals' viral video where she said that Black people are tired and that they really don't have any responsibility to educate white people around how to help them or how to end racism or how they need to improve.
What she said was, it shouldn't be our responsibility to educate white people and other people about how.
Okay. All righty. Holding. While we hold, I'm going to get a sip of water.
There. You can get a sip of water. You can get a sip of water. Even though, so we just switched cameras. The camera we were using somehow just died on us. And I don't know what happened. It's a much higher quality, better quality. And so now I'm actually using, let me see if I can, let's see if there's any way I can actually switch over back to my cam mic. Hold on, I think this is gonna fix it for us, hopefully. There we go. Now we got like a better, you know, HD.
Yes,
quality.
HD quality.
So again, you know, and so you were saying, like Amanda Seals was saying,
that it's not, it shouldn't be our responsibility to teach other people how to properly advocate for our community. If you are empathetic, if you're an empathetic person, you should just know how to treat other people. And when you see other people being improperly treated, then you should advocate for that, for them. And so I agree with that.
And I don't
agree.
Does not. I don't agree.
He thinks that we should help in the education process. What I'm saying is, if you ask me questions, I'll have a conversation, but I'm not going to go out of my way to teach you about slavery and its effects even now. I'm not going to teach you about reparations and what that looks like. I don't want to have to keep showing you videos of unarmed Black men who ask a police officer why you're pulling me over, and then they get shot. Right. You know, I don't want to have to keep having that conversation, but Zach thinks.
But if we don't do it, who's going to do it? The thing is this, there are Black people in this world who don't even know their own history. The majority of Black people had no idea about the Tulsa race riots or the Tulsa massacre as we now have deemed it. I knew about that because I'm a well-read Black man. But I know that many people didn't know that. They don't know anything about Reconstruction and and that's what's shocking to me, because we're reliving Reconstruction. We just went through the first Black president of the United States. Then we saw a massive swing in the opposite direction to tear down everything he did to advance this country and to advance a quality of life for Black people. And we have a whole group of Black people themselves that have been brainwashed by the media, who don't even understand what President Obama did, what he stood for, and his platform, and who are now fighting against President Biden, like Umar Johnson. These people they don't understand the bigger picture because they don't understand their history and they don't understand how history works. So if Black people themselves don't understand history, if Black people themselves don't know how to advocate, how can we expect that white people will understand?
Well, how can we expect them to
Here's the thing. When we educate, when we put the information out there for Black people, those who want it devour it because it relates to them. It's who they are. we have to think about that in terms of like white people and them learning the truth, because we've all been miseducated, all of us. So what would motivate a white person to actually gain an appropriate American education if they've been miseducated and it doesn't affect them? We have to turn that light switch on. We have to be that catalyst. But that's been our issue. But your nuance, you said you just mentioned these questions came to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I have a rule on my page pretty much where like you can ask me a question, but only if you've done like some basic background research on it. And so some people will ask me things like, hey, Jordan, what does AAVE stand for? And I'm like, that is a great question for Google. That is a straightforward one. You can ask somebody who's not me, because the literature is there, the research is there, and I encourage you to go look on your own. But then they'll ask things like, okay, so now I didn't do my research, I came back and I have a new question. Why can only some people use AAVE? Like, I don't understand why this is off limits to white people, or why certain words and phrases are off limits. That I can work with, that I can explain, because I can understand how in your whiteness and in a society that has given you so much privilege, you don't understand the word no or the weight that your actions carry. That I can work with. But if you come to me with absolutely no knowledge and no desire to do any knowledge, then you're not actually willing to learn from me. You want me to spoon feed it to you and baby feed it to you so that you can then feel like a good person, but you're not actually willing to do the work to advance yourself. You just want to use me as like a crutch, essentially. And so I have a pretty consistent rule where I'm like, unless they're like 15, I do have some like kids who like come through my page periodically and they're like, hey, so I grew up in the super, super South, and my school is super, super conservative, and this is the first time I'm hearing any of this stuff, and I'm 14 years old. Where do I start? I'm lost. Help me. That I can work with. But some people are like, I'm 65 and this is my first time with this stuff. Where do I start? And I'm like, start with the literature that already exists, the literature that might be accessible to you. And that's pretty much my consistent rule of thumb. And then I'm working on like a book list so that people can just go and read books on their own so that they can find where to start, as opposed to just saying, go out in the wind and good luck. But until I finish typing that up, I'm like, go out in the wind, good luck. Ask people who've already done the research, ask people who've done the literature. Because it's not saying never ask a Black person, but it's maybe your cashier at Walmart isn't in the headspace to have a conversation on racism with you because they're just trying to get through their day. But Angela Davis has made her life's work around this. So start with the literature that already exists and then come ask me stuff if we have that relationship. But if our relationship is I'm the Black girl working at Walmart and you just happen to be there having a question, I'm not your gal. But if it's somebody who you have that relationship with or has taken up the mantle of educating, do the background research and then ask your homie.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good approach. Now, I agree with that piece of it. But then again, so just this week, I'm so glad I'm trying to figure out how to frame it, Jordan, because I feel as though now you got me torn. I was really pissed off last night when I was on. Every night I record. I watch the local news. Where are you located? We're in Atlanta.
I'm in North Carolina.
So we watch the local news. I watch local news at 11 o'clock, and then I record the 11th hour on MSNBC. Okay. And so I watch every episode. I don't miss it. Don't miss it. Last night, Brian Williams had a Democratic strategist named James Carville on the show. James Carville is a big deal in the Democratic Party. He was a huge reason why Bill Clinton got elected. He was a major strategist. He's got many people elected. He's a great forecaster, and he's able to really identify reasons and help Democratic candidates. And James Carville said in recent interviews that wokeism is a huge problem in the Democratic Party. And he literally cited what you said about AAVE not being something that people can't say, and that is causing people to leave the movement and turn away from the work. That the more you tell people who are blinded by privilege what they can and cannot do, they just give up. And I actually, from hearing you say that, I don't agree with him about wokeism. I believe that being woke is a part of my culture. When you attack the concept of being woke, you're attacking all the things that I hold sacred as an educated Black man, because that's what it means to be woke, to be an educated Black person and to live in the truth of what racism is and the work ahead of us. But when we say that white people can't say certain terms that we popularize in our culture, are we hurting the forward movement of true racial reconciliation, which is the only way racism will ever end?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a unique to your generation. I think that's a complete, Gen Z move, because if a white
allowing white people to say words that
not the N word, it's not like the N word. It's like, give us an example of a word like
cis, period.
If you can't say, if you're white, you can't say cis.
Yeah, like some people like, if you're white, don't call me cis, because we don't have that relationship. That messed TikTok up for a couple of days.
That's a good point. That's not what he's referring to, right? Like, you can't call someone a cis if you don't know what the word means, because you're not connected to them. That's actually, that's a great example, but that's really not what he's referring to. I guess he used it as an example. He also talked about the term Latinx and communities of color and things that are in the academic world that educated Black people are saying that he feels are isolating white people. But I mean, do you agree or you don't agree? Like, are we doing damage and not winning? Because to win over allies.
Yeah, I think it's the right move. I don't think most of us understand how to do it correctly. Because a lot of people, like, I understand when people say, like, oh, white people can't say period because they don't understand where it comes from. They use it wrong. And then they call it Gen Z slang when it's not Gen Z slang. It's belonged to African American vernacular English since the beginning. But what people get on TikTok or social media and then say is, oh, white people can't say period. There's no anything, there's no explanation, you can't say period unless you understand where it came from and credit it appropriately. People don't know how to have the conversation on why it's important to establish boundaries. Therefore, it just seems like a wall and a no access zone because you're not cool enough to be in the cool kids group. When that's not the case, you just don't know what you're doing and you're making a mess. But if you don't tell them that, then they don't understand the damage that they're doing. And so that cuts some people off. They feel like, well, you're not telling me what I'm doing wrong. So how do I know I'm doing something wrong? You're just being mean to me for no reason. I don't want to be here anymore. Instead of having those conversations on, hey, friend, you can't really say period until I can say it without running the risk of losing my job.
Right.
Maybe make some steps forward first. But it's hard to have people who are so worked up and so exhausted be willing to have those conversations, because to us it's common sense, but to them it's brand new.
Correct.
So everything that you said is on point. I want to know what your thoughts are on effective activism today. What does that look like? Because I am not of the mindset of marching. I just feel like we have done that. What is the new way what is the new form of activism? I do believe in boycotting. Zack and I will boycott a good business, okay?
We'll boycott you, Jordan. You messed up, girl. You messed up. We're going to boycott you.
I will do that.
Dr. Umar.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't boycott.
So what are some Gen Z ways that are effective?
What I'm noticing most is like the way that we can utilize social media to cause change is pretty, I think it's pretty noteworthy. We currently, our biggest mode of activism is signing petitions. We are slowly trying to think of things more effective than just solving a petition, because some people will like sign the petition and then go on with their day and never touch it again.
Yeah.
I think about it, and when people ask me about it, I try to think of it on a personal level and a level within yourself, number one, and in your community, number two. So when I teach people, I'm like, the first thing to be an activist or a good ally or a good accomplice is to stay educated and be willing to check yourself, because you can be as woke as you want to be. But if somebody says, hey, what you did caused harm, and I didn't mean to, so I didn't do it. I'm like, you're not really doing the good work. So teaching yourself and staying educated, and then being willing to have those conversations with the people around you, because I can get up and I can march and scream and holler and protest all I want to. But if Casey isn't educating her dad, John, on why what John said is racist, John's not hearing me. John needs to hear Casey. So your best move is to be the one to educate in your own orbit.
That's true. But we have to be, I agree with that. But that's the whole value of educating a Casey. Because Casey is fertile soil. She wants to learn. She wants to do better. She wants to know how to be an appropriate ally. And once we help Casey and equip her with the tools, she'll use those tools to change the mind of John, her mom, her dad, her family, and we move a whole family of unconscious white supremacists further away from that reality. Or at least that's my belief.
That's the hope.
I'm a firm believer in activism, and I agree with you 100%, Jordan. It's about what we do on social media and how we leverage that. I believe that it's important to also for our generation to support your generation. It is our work to mentor you, to guide you, and to even finance your efforts, right? So when you come and say, I'm running for this office, it is our responsibility to front up some cash to make that donation to young activists, to young politicians. You start a nonprofit organization, we'd be right there for you, because that is what we do. When you can no longer march or don't have that desire to be the boot on the ground, or you have family responsibilities, children at home, a job that won't allow it, you support the movement, you finance in other ways.
What does strong activism for your generation look like? Because I'm finding that there is a generational gap in terms of how we can approach the Gen Z group. Like, how can we impart wisdom upon you without you all feeling like we're trying to tell you what to do? Because nobody really showed us. I feel like after the civil rights movement, and maybe into this after around 75, a lot of the activism kind of died down, and a lot of our leaders did not take on the next person to lead. And so we have all kinds of leaders popping up everywhere, and it's great, but we're all doing different things. And so it's causing a lot of division within the group.
And some of those people are plants, right? Like, I'm a firm believer that someone like Charlemagne, whose real name is McKelvey something, Leonard McKelvey, I firmly believe he's a paid plant. Like, he's being paid and financed by conservative media. Because I've been researching it. It's that Dr. Umar video. I've been researching my butt off. iHeartRadio, these people have large conservative financial backings. And I believe that they have a financial vested interest in keeping the black community at bay. Here's further evidence. So when I turn on MSNBC, I see Brittany Cunningham Packer. I don't agree with a lot of things that she may say, but she's there. I see Latasha Brown. I see Eugene Daniels. I see strong, educated black activists. They don't have a show. They don't have the media platform, but Portia Williams, who I love, she has a platform. DeBrat has a platform. Claudia Jordan has a platform. They're elevating a certain kind of person that they want Black America to see and hear, that I believe they can easily control and manipulate into pushing an agenda. But again, your brand of activism.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, so it doesn't really have a clear cut, what does activism look like right now? And I think a lot of it is because we didn't have that guidance or that leader to follow, because a lot of us looked at our leaders and then criticized our leaders, and I guess in a lot of ways, I don't want to say took them down a notch, but I think a lot about how when I was younger, Martin Luther King was the end all be all. He was it. That was the peak leader. And then right around 17, 18, people started to really evaluate what we were being taught about Martin Luther King, what he actually said and who he actually was as a person, and what that looked like in his personal life. And so all of a sudden people were dissecting Martin Luther King, and we were like, oh, I mean, he's great. He was awesome. But there were some things that we fundamentally don't agree with, or maybe we thought it could go differently. And people started breaking off into different factions as we really started to analyze the leaders of the movement. Or Rosa Parks. A lot of people, the more they learn about Claudette Colvin, the more people are really analyzing and dissecting what we've been taught. And in doing so, our movement has become in some ways more radical, but also more frantic. And in its frantic nature, almost buzzes itself apart because we're so hypercritical, because we're so on edge about everything and what is true and what isn't true. So right now it looks like a lot of infographics on Instagram, which, are great for getting the word out, but maybe not. I remember last summer, a lot of people my age got activist fatigue. And I was like, all y'all did was sit in the house all day and repost the same infographic. I don't even think you read it. what do you mean you're tired? You just got here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think conversely, there is a lot of like really radical chaos in the streets. Like I see the protests, and I see people my own age like leading marches, or I see people at night like throwing the bombs, like throwing the smoke bombs back at the police, and I'm like, that's wild. Like, good for you, but it's either the throwing the smoke bomb back at the police crowd, or the I signed a petition and reblogged a post crowd. And I'm like, somewhere between A and B might be the solution, but we can't figure out where that solution lies on the spectrum, or how much do we need all of them, and in what ways and in what forms do you best fit?
Zach says Black fatigue is real, and Black stamina can be real too. It's about which one we want to emphasize. And what you said about Martin King Jr., when I tell you, you're speaking absolute facts. This is my favorite MLK book. I don't know if you've ever read it, if you've been exposed to it. And let me tell you about the book very briefly. This is from Taylor Branch. Taylor Branch is a noted American historian, and he is the authorized biographer of MLK. And he wrote 3 big, huge, massive versions of his life. But what's beautiful is that it shows the evolution of his practices. So a lot of things I'm hearing in terms of the dissection and the analysis of, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they failed this last part. He had human failings, but his activism and his belief system evolved, and we don't get the evolution. We only get the assimilation and the join hands and the let's fight segregation. We made progress in that battle. He saw a forward path that involved financial and economic equality. That is not what America teaches us. No. But this book thoroughly explores it, and I believe that the latter day Dr. King would resonate so much more with Gen Z, because he was progressive before America was progressive.
Yeah,
right.
I'm in agreement with that too. But he was killed before actually
right. And this was suppressed. The teachings of his latter campaigns was suppressed. The media was not. They didn't want us to hear that. They did not want Jewish people and Asian people and poor white people to hear these later, so they didn't give it attention.
The thing I think we've lost the most about Dr. King and his activism is that he went around to cities to educate the leaders inside of their city.
That's correct.
We've lost that. He was educating them about financial wealth, how to bring financial revenue to your community. He was teaching pastors this. It all started in the church, because that's where you could get the largest group of people to congregate.
That's right.
At one time. And so I think that is what we've lost, a unified sense of activism, getting educated about why we're doing this and how we can do this effectively to bring about some sense of change and revenue to our communities. That's what we're missing.
Yep. I agree 100%. And so,
I agree.
I need to read the book.
Can you pass me that? Pass me the weekly book. I talk about this book every week.
I love it.
Stamped from the beginning by Dr. Ibram Kendi X. He has a child's version or a teenage version, Jordan, which is fine to read. If you probably in college. Are you in college?
I'm starting grad school in the fall.
Oh, what major?
I'm getting an MFA in poetry. I'm so excited.
Beautiful. I have my MFA in acting. Wonderful. Where will you be attending?
UNCG, the University of North Carolina, Greensboro.
Which is one of the best writing programs in the United States of America. Yes. I was an English major, so I have 2 degrees in English. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in English education. I taught high school for 10 years.
Mentor.
Before going and becoming in what's called central office. I became a central office administrator for a school system here. And now I'm in educational sales. But the point is, he has a children's version. With your school, you may not have time. It's a fine book. But if you have time for the big boy version, this one is amazing. And what it talks about is what Tracey said earlier about us not having mentors and leaders during our time frame. Because we grew up in the 80s and the 90s, America had shifted. Because of all the people of the civil rights movement, there was now a new focus on assimilation and having Black people assimilate and be as much like white as possible to survive and to thrive and to succeed. And that was the push. And America was elevating people like Clarence Thomas, who had assimilated, and holding them up as the gold standard of this is what you do to succeed. That's correct. And it wasn't until President Obama that a lot of Black people really realized that let's wake up. And slowly you start to see a shift and a change. And we even witnessed Obama himself become woke over his presidency because he himself had to learn that the lies we were told about the vision of America in the 80s, it wasn't real. And we weren't exposed to unless you were self-taught. If you sought out, we didn't read Angela Davis. We didn't read Stokely Carmichael. We didn't even know who they were.
I mean, I knew who they were because of my mama.
Right.
But if you didn't have a mother or a parent who was an educator in your Black household, you probably weren't exposed to those things. But I'm not going to lie. I was a pure artist. I wasn't running to read about Stokely Carmichael. I know more about Amiri Baraka, and the Black arts movement because of, my passion there. So that's where I discovered, these Black artists were activists too, through their acting, through their writing, through their poetry. So, yeah.
So here's a question. What is the focus of with your poetry? Where is that going? What is that going to give us in this world?
Yeah, so right now I write a lot of poetry about grief and trauma and loss and what that looks like. Just number one, on like the universal, like this is what pain looks like and this is what it's like to hurt, but this is also what it's like to heal. And then it talks about it a lot from like the perspective of a Black woman and what it feels like to maneuver the world in my skin and in my gender and in all of my identities, and what does that experience look like? Because like I've had a lot of heartbreaks, course of life, but my heartbreaks are somehow also shaped by my race and my identity as a Black woman. And so like I remember when a poem I wrote was about the day that like when my ex and I broke up and how shocked I was when he started dating a white girl, except I wasn't that shocked at all, but how it really rocked my self-esteem in a way I wasn't expecting. And when I wrote it and turned it into my poetry class back in undergrad, they all kind of like got it, but I had like one girl in the class who was also Black and she like got it. And she was like, yo, that's crazy. And I was like, I know, right? And what that experience looks like both from heartbreak, but also to be told that the white girl is easier to love. Not that he didn't love me, but that she's just easier to love, and what that means for myself and how I felt as a human being and as a Black woman who stands her ground and has opinions and pushes people to do their best, as opposed to the person who doesn't do those things, might not be, as fun, but they don't push me. So that's cool. And how that shaped me. And I think I processed a lot of that hurt through my poetry, and it hopefully resonates with all people, but especially like Black authors looking for a way to feel and a way to process those emotions in a world where we don't get a lot of those books. We don't have a lot of those resources. So yeah.
Who are your favorite poets and writers? Who are the ones who really speak and inspire you?
Yeah. So Nikki Giovanni is my favorite poet, like hands down, number one.
Dope in person too. So
I want to meet her so bad. She came to my undergrad right after I graduated.
Oh,
right after I graduated. I was like, huh? What do you mean?
She gets it. So yeah. Nikki. Yes.
I do adore her. And there's another poet. Her name is Alison Joseph. She is not as widely known, but she wrote a book called Confessions of a Barefaced Woman. And that whole work is also about like being a Black woman, maneuvering all these different things. But some of her poems are just like really cute and fun. And it's like, this is the time where I shaved off all my hair. Because honestly, I got tired of people. So I just shaved it all off. That was cool. And she writes sometimes about like losing her parents or losing her siblings.
Yeah, I know her. I heard her on NPR, and she was telling the story. Yes,
she's a delight. She actually came to my school, and we had like a whole chit chat thing, and I came second place in the poetry contest, and she followed me on Instagram, so I keep up with what she's up to. She's a hoot. And I think I remember reading some bell hooks earlier on, and she's not a poet, but I love everything that Zadie Smith writes.
The who?
Zadie Smith.
Oh,
she writes more short stories.
Yeah, I have several of her books, but they're still packed up. I was gonna grab it, grab White Teeth, but it's packed up. It's in the whole room. I would say my favorite poet of today is Zadie Smith. Is right now my favorite. And old school, I love Lucille Clifton.
Sonia Sanchez is one of my favorites.
I love some of her works as well.
Trying to think of most of my favorite writers are playwrights. One of my favorite playwrights is Terrell Alvin McCraney. Not just because we went to school together, but a lot of his writing is poetic. And so I love playwrights that can infuse poetry in the world of the play.
So we have a game to play. And I will give no opinion, which is going to be shocking to Tracey. I will not share my opinion. And it's called, Should We? And you give your answer. Tracey, you give your answer. Audience, you can also give your answer. Question number 1 is, should we defund the police?
Yes.
I used to say yes, but there needs to be reform within the defunding. I don't know how to. I think we should allot a certain amount of the funds that they are giving to certain areas of expertise. We've talked about that.
Well, I can't give an opinion. It's violating the rule, but
we've talked about counseling.
It's the two generations, right? Giving their perspective.
The only reason I'm saying don't defund the police is because I have friends who are police officers, and I've spoken to them about, things that are going. And right now there is a shift happening. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are billboards that say Fulton County Police Department is looking for recruits. DeKalb County Police, people are quitting the force now, and so our communities are.
Zack and the Candace say, defund. But we are in it's a consequence.
But you can't completely take the funds out of there.
I don't think we should do it all at once.
Police it's got to have something else after it.
Yeah, I think in terms of defunding, I think when people say that, and sometimes I'll even say abolish the police and then really watch people sweat, because then they think, oh my God, you're looking for anarchy. And I'm like, no, we're looking for a replacement system, like a system that was built on upholding slavery is probably never going to serve people of color the way it needs to, which means that what we have is fundamentally flawed. It's not broken. This is the way it was designed to work, but it is fundamentally flawed, which means take that money and redo. Take the money and put it into services, into mental health resources, into after school programs for kids. You want kids off the street, fine. Give them something to do when school ends. Fund their schools so maybe they want to stay in the school. Give them adequate teaching. And then make something new to replace the police to do the protection of people that actually want to protect citizens. Because I don't think that all police are bad. I think most police want to do their whole protect and serve thing, but the system itself is so corrupted that the good people who want to do that can't really do it efficiently, which means if we toss the whole thing, keep the people who want to be there, recruit other people who want to be there, then we have a new, better system than what. So
the next, should we vote Democrat when it is the lesser evil? Should we vote Democrat when it's the lesser evil?
Well, what if you're gonna vote? I mean, independent.
You're gonna vote. You're either gonna vote Republican, Democrat, or not vote.
We're going to have to defund the political system.
Tear the whole thing down.
We're gonna have to change party, like we have to reconstruct parties if that's gonna happen. Like it's gonna have to be a whole.
So you're saying vote Democrat if it's the lesser of the two evils?
Yeah.
That is the.
Unless I'm moving to another country.
Okay. Gen Z, what do you say?
I'm gonna say we should. Just I know that if we don't, we'll split the vote and end up with Republicans, which or whoever is the worst of the evil. But
I'm not voting for
it hurts.
At all.
Zach Thomas says no, don't vote for the Democrat through the lesser of two evils.
Well, then what is your resolution?
That's the struggle.
That's my thing. I get it, but what else is there? Move to another country because that's all you're gonna be able to do.
In November of 2022, you're gonna have in a lot of states in North Carolina. I think you guys are picking up a House of Representatives seat.
I think so.
You're gonna have a huge battle because your governor is Democrat, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what about your state legislature? Is it primarily Republican though?
Yes, it is primarily.
So you're gonna have probably a brand new Republican seat. I mean, it's gonna be really difficult, and you're gonna have a lot of Democrats who are going to run, who are not going to be progressive. They are going to absolutely double down on not abolishing the police. They're going to use and say all kinds of rhetoric that is in line with conservatism because they want those votes. So do we not vote, or do we elect them and then try to push them in the right direction? Like we're trying to do with Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema.
I feel like that's the right move, but only because it's like the only move. Like unless we like get rid of the two-party system, you will always be forced whether to not vote or to vote one way or the other for the greater good, even if the greater good is not that good. I think that's how a lot of people in my generation view Joe Biden. They were like, we didn't want him, but he's all we had, so we'll make do with what we got.
And yes, and I agree, there are some good Republicans, but as a whole, when it comes to the entire community at large, our country at large, they don't typically make legislation.
Who are they? I'm thinking, like, who are the good Republicans?
They don't make legislation that affects my community in a positive way.
Like many people would say Tim Scott is a good Republican.
No.
Like honestly, no, seriously, Tim Scott is moderate for a Republican. He's moderate.
But he just got up there today and said that racism,
that America
is not racist.
Country.
What?
That's what he said. But I'm just telling you that he is the definition of a good Republican.
Because he's a good boy.
To them. But the reality, but the reality is, who's better? Who in the Republican Party, Candy? Who's out there?
If I had to vote between, where is he located?
Candy.
Okay.
They are not there.
You're on timeout.
Okay, so here's the next. Should we?
I love you, girl.
You know, should we be giving reparations?
Absolutely. Oh, go ahead, girl.
You got it, because you're right.
You say yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Even if we can't do every Black person gets XYZ, take what you should have given us and should have long since given us, add the interest, because, you know, it's been a minute, and put it into our communities.
Girl, he did.
The thing. Yeah, he did. He gone. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
They gotta be alive, Candy. Someone who can affect change now, okay?
He ain't riding.
He ain't coming back.
He ain't coming back. So, you know, I think I agree with the reparations, but you know,
you said you weren't supposed to give.
I'm not giving an opinion. I'm going to give how it could happen, though.
Oh, okay.
I've been thinking I'm working on how I'm going to write this up to post on Facebook and make it like a little TikTok.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. But I don't believe we're ever going to get to a place in my lifetime where they're going to actually give all the descendants of slavery their reparations, but they can start with prioritize reparations right now. Mm-hmm. If your family was involved in a Tulsa race massacre where their land was taken from them and their businesses were destroyed and they lost everything they had worked for, you deserve your reparations right now. You are prioritized. If you have a family member who was lynched and you are the descendant of a lynched family member, you move to the front of the line. You get your reparations right now, because if those things happen today, it will be immediately financial compensation.
Or,
so that is, to me, the beginning process. But there, and again, there's all types of massacre, riots, instances where we can trace back your actual family being damaged by the systems that have been put in place by this country and hold people down. You deserve your reparations, that you should be prioritized. That to me will be step one.
Yes, and also come into our communities and stop gentrifying them so our people have to move.
Yeah.
If you're going to come into our communities and build up and bring grocery stores and banks and things, they should be for us. We should be given opportunities to own our own banking systems, our own education system. Look, I lived in Chicago for 12 years, and there is a Chinatown, a Koreatown, a little Italy, and all of those communities have their own everything. They do not have to leave their communities to do anything. So we should be able to have the same institutions afforded to us, with the same kind of resources that those kids get on Redwood.
Or just give it back. This is what happens. I also researched that, right? Because people want to say that Black people don't have that because we didn't build that. We did build it. And every time we build it, you put our interstate highway through our community, and it was level. Every time we gain any wealth, any kind of community that was our own, whether it was the Greenbrier community in Atlanta, it was, at one point it was the Sweet Arbor community, then it was the Greenbrier community, it was then the West End. Every time Black people created a center of economic power, the elected officials of that city found a way to tear it down, like legally, but it wasn't ethically, and it wasn't moral, and it most certainly wasn't the Christian thing to do. That's why they always tore us down and got us. And so, I'm dealing with something in my community where I've gotten to know my councilwoman. Shouts out to Carmelita Gums. I've been able to work with her in some discriminatory practices that we're dealing with our builder. And our builder has specifically said to certain residents, Black people don't want amenities. They just want a house to live in, and that's the mindset. We don't have to pave your streets. We don't have to build your sidewalks. Oh my God.
Where they don't crumble. We don't have to give you gates around your, not the community, but around your trash bins. We don't have to give you doggy receptacles. We don't have to give you those things because y'all don't want to play tennis. We don't have to fix your tennis courts. That is the mindset. I want you to come into my community and treat my community the same way you do in Roswell and Alpharetta and Johns Creek. Don't be leaving your stuff to sit on the grass and ruin our grass. Like, I'm dealing with this right now. Okay.
If your dog comes into my yard, you won't have a dog.
Yes. And so you're right, Ken.
Fair enough.
So because I've gotten the councilwoman involved, I've learned about a performance bond. A lot of people don't know in our communities, once these builders get done, they have to finish certain things before they can get their money.
That's good.
So if we tell our council women and men, hey, they haven't done X, Y, and Z in our community, and we are not giving the city of South Fulton, the city of whatever, should not give them their performance bond until they take care of our community like they do the other community.
That's good. That is activism. That is activism. So Jordan, that was our last should we. And so what we do every week towards the end of the live cast is we talk about the up, the down, the clown, and then the best of us. So what the up is really, I guess, good news.
Yes, good
something
news.
That was good. And then we kind of share our opinion. So we're going to start off with the up.
Woo.
And this is the up that we landed on, and is this. President Biden just concluded his first 100 days in office on today. He celebrated this milestone right here in the city of Atlanta. I mean, in the city of Atlanta, and really came. He came. His wife. They visited former President Jimmy Carter. They had a huge rally. It was so many great things said. So many great politicians. This has been deemed the up. In that time frame, he's done a lot of things. But with that, you had, of course, the first time you've had a female vice president as well as a female Speaker of the House. This is a clip of him giving his speech last night where he talked about some of his accomplishments. He said he would have 100 million Americans vaccinated. He had 200 million Americans vaccinated in that first 100 days. He passed a huge, sweeping $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package that put stimulus payments in 83% of American households. 83% of Americans received some form of a stimulus payment. But even with that being said, there's a lot of things that he has not yet done that he's working on. My question is, what do you think about his performance thus far, ladies? And what needs to happen next?
I think he's done better than I was expecting. He was a lot more efficient than I was prepared to give him credit for. And I'm grateful on that front, because I really thought he'd come in, he'd talk his talk, and then he would continue to take pictures while walking around in different places, like Twitter likes to clown him for. But he actually got a good amount done. Like, I got a stimulus check for the first time this whole pandemic, and I was like, neat, money, even though I struggled for like ever. This is good. Mm-hmm. I've got my second vaccine shot today, so I'm really grateful for that. Yes, to freedom. Very excited. I don't understand why I wish he could do more about the immigration crisis at the border. I hate that there are still children in cages and in places they shouldn't be in. I want to see more done on that front, but I have to remind myself.
Right, let's talk about that.
What can we do? Yeah. Should we, instead of yes, take them out of cages? Absolutely. Should there be dormitories or some kind of housing,
like residence hall?
Yeah. Why can't we do that?
But here's a question though. So this is the issue with that, right? Like, I agree with that, but here's the thing. When President Biden took office, the border crisis was winding down, and it was like all the focus was just, let's reunite the families that were separated unjustly.
Right.
But then you had a 1,000-person surge that hasn't stopped, where people are running for their lives from Central America and South America to America, not being detained or stopped, coming through a whole entire country. Some of these kids have traveled through the whole entire nation of Mexico.
But why can't we have hotels?
But here's the thing: the majority of Americans are not going to want to see American tax dollars build temporary housing facilities for people who are not citizens. I'm just telling you.
But then they complain about them being in cages.
What they want, they're using the cages to trigger Democrats. To be fair and honest, I'm telling you, like, truthfully, I really feel as though that's the triggering language. But the reality is, they do not want to allow any taxpayers' dollars to pay for non-Americans who are Black and brown. Now, using taxpayer dollars to pay Israel a $500 million allotment a year is fine, because we pay every year about $500 million for Israeli defense, which I'm not saying we should not, because we made a commitment to that nation in 1949, 1948. But the thought of the fact that why couldn't we do that for Black and brown kids at the border? I agree with the fact that there should be housing built, but the problem is the American taxpayers, for the most part, they're not going to support it. They want to see, this is what they want. A lot of people, even Democrats, want to see us just send the kids back.
But here's my thing.
Send the kids back.
There are so many vacant buildings that they have turned into production companies all over this country. And if they were able to do it to shoot a movie, they can turn an abandoned warehouse into a livable facility for these kids until they're able to go home or find their parents. There's just a way that they can do it.
And they've done that, though. Yeah. They have built temporary housing slots. It's just not ideal scenarios. It's not a hotel. It's not ideal.
Well, I think he's doing a really good job, considering it's only been 100 days, guys. He's got three.
A lot done.
He's got 3 years and 3/4 to go.
He does. Yeah. He has a long time to go. He does.
He's moving.
He is moving. And so we hope that he can get a grip on the border crisis, because it is a crisis, in the next 100 days. I hope that he's able to really pass the infrastructure plan so that it can begin to build the American economy
Right.
in the next 100 days. But that's gonna, and I hope that he can find a way to get Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema to be real supportive of the Democratic platform, because they're the holdup. I'm afraid that we're in for a position of gridlock, actually, and no more progress will be made, but we'll see. Dr. Umar Johnson, that's Dr. Umar Jordan. He said Joe Biden hasn't done anything for Black people. He said Joe Biden has done stuff for the trans community. I guess he's assumed that there are no such thing as Black trans women, or women who happen to be trans that are Black, or men. And I guess
that's what I said.
I guess not.
In addition, he definitely said that Joe Biden passed an Asian hate bill, which Joe Biden could not pass any bills. He signed a bill that was passed by Congress, but he says he's done nothing. Joe Biden has done nothing for Black people. Here's the real question, though. What has Joe Biden really done for Black people? Like, really, honest question.
Well, I think that it's one of those moments where, like, in what he did for Americans, period, he also did for Black folk, like putting vaccines into neighborhoods that need them when Black people are getting hit the hardest by the pandemic. Right. Giving us vaccines is honestly what we were looking for right now. Now, making sure people are not nervous or super wary to get vaccines is a different issue, but he's on that whole campaign right now to like tell everybody to get their shots, because you shouldn't be afraid of them, or whatever he's doing. But like he put the stimulus check in 83% of American households. We're a part of that 83%. So he might not have done anything specifically like, for Black folk, this is what I'm doing, A, B, C, D, E. But he also did not say you missed out on the check. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got the check. Thank you.
But that is my issue with these platforms, is that when you have someone on here who speaks very, I wouldn't say eloquent.
Dr. Umar
very
Johnson
eloquently,
is a well-spoken man.
Well-read, well-spoken. And sometimes he spouts things that are not true, and it sounds so true. Believable. And that is my issue, is that there's no one on the Breakfast Club that can counter him. That
they don't want to counter him.
But they're still not smart enough. You cannot put Charlemagne the God, Envy, and Angela Yee all together.
Jesus Christ is Lord.
All three of their brains together could not
take that down.
Counter Dr. Umar Johnson, and that's why he's able to go on these shows and do that. He can't do that to Roland Martin, who will spout out counterfacts. He's done it. They've gone at it.
They have, and it was excellent.
You know, and so I forget them. I'm on your side with
here's the thing with, I'm glad you stopped watching.
Or believing it. I do watch every day.
Well, just don't believe it. You know, Dr. Umar Johnson, and I didn't know, I started researching to do my, to make that, like my little video I made. I don't know if you've seen it, Jordan. Just give it a look. You made it.
Good.
It might be. It was the best I could do. I mean, it's nothing like, your content creation. I just do the best I can. And so, one, his name is not Umar Johnson. He changed his name, which is always suspect. We can't find any actual evidence of his doctorate degree. And he was supposed to be opening a school for Black boys, and he raised over $500,000, and there's no evidence of a school, and there is no clear trail.
He talked about,
what a school at?
He said the school could be done in 3 weeks if a Black person who owned an air conditioning company would donate their services to the school.
That's what I'm talking about.
That money you raised. What about the money?
Google this man. Google him.
That money went to the building.
Yeah.
There are other things that need to be fixed inside of the building to be operational. Okay. And yes, Stephanie, you're right. Not everybody wants to get the vaccine. You do what.
Girl, I was running to that vaccine. I said, put all them. I need 20 vaccines if I can get it. If 20 vaccines gonna keep me from getting COVID for 20 years, I want all them vaccines.
Do what is best for you, but I just feel like having access. That's the thing. Yeah. We need
choice.
Access to proper medical care. We need access to proper education. We need access to finances.
Yeah.
So providing us with that is what I appreciate.
Yeah.
And again, I'm telling, this is my fear of the vaccine hesitancy in the Black community, and it's not many, but it's a portion. And in the larger conservative, Republican, evangelical community, is that this is a virus. It has one job, and that is to live. Yep. That is to replicate.
Yep.
When we have a big God. I believe God has given us a window in humanity to use good God-given common sense, to He empowered the makers to make a vaccine.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get it. This vaccine is going to mutate. This vaccine is going to become vaccine resistant and drug resistant, and more people are going to die needlessly when they could have all been. If everybody would get vaccinated now with the available vaccines, the pandemic would be over and COVID-19 would be done. But it's not going to happen.
We could do it like smallpox.
You said what happened?
We could knock it out like smallpox. Realistically, if we mobilize the whole world, we can take the whole thing down like smallpox. We know how it spreads. We know how to fix it. Get your shot, walk away. But no.
But no. Yeah. Well, I would not allow my child to be anywhere near Dr. Umar, and I can only imagine what it would do to the misogyny that exists in the Black community.
I have been fighting the misogyny fight for a week now, a whole week. Because one Black guy said to me on TikTok, he was like, Black men don't benefit from the patriarchy, we're Black. And I was like, you're joking. And he was like, we couldn't possibly. We are afraid of getting shot in the streets. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm afraid of getting kidnapped and raped and shot in the streets. Do we want to talk about this? And he was like, but the prison rate, the disproportionate prison rate. And I'm like, yes, baby, they hate Black folk. Sorry.
If they can lock me up, they would.
Right. Like Black women are also arrested disproportionately to white women and convicted disproportionately to white women because we're also, fun fact, my love, Black. They didn't like that. So we've been beefing for a week and
girl, when you get my age, you'll start.
Well, I want you to write down, Jordan, June 15th. I'm going to bring together a collection of the brightest and best TikTok young minds of Gen Z. And we're going to have like a panel around, the liberatory thinking for Juneteenth. So we had our up, and yep, this Candy, we're going to have you ready for that. We're going to have a whole discussion on this misogyny. Because you're right. Candace has truly worked hard with some education and liberation and freedom and some great stuff with bell hooks. We also talked about this up, which was of course Joe Biden, but also this down, which is the attack on wokeism that is really making the rounds. It really pissed me off. We already kind of hit on it, but I feel like I should double down on the woke concept. I feel like I should be like hashtagging stay woke every day of my life. What do you think about that? What do y'all think?
I think we absolutely need the wokeism.
It's uniquely Black.
But not just uniquely Black. It's some people who are getting educated that wouldn't normally get educated because people are speaking about things that they've read. They're introducing people to books. They're introducing people to therapists and people who have expertise in certain areas that we wouldn't normally be introduced to. Zach posts stuff all the time that I go back and I research and I have a conversation with him like, dang, thank you for posting that because I didn't consider that. So he can go shove it.
Yeah, we're gonna stay woke, but I'm gonna troll him. I'm trolling James Carville. I'm gonna his old tail. I'm gonna stay on him like white on rice.
I got your baby.
Who I'm not gonna stay on is this week's clown of the week. And this is your homeboy, Jordan.
Not me, said the flea.
Senator Tim Scott. Now, Senator Tim Scott got on national television and said that America was not a racist country, although he detailed a lot of racist incidents that he faced, including the fact that his grandfather could not read. What do you guys think about Senator Tim Scott and the commentary he gave for the Republican Party in rebuttal to President Biden's 100-day address?
It was goofy.
He's a goofy.
It was goofy. It was goofy.
Was there anything good in the speech?
No.
I took nothing away from that at all. Besides, America's not racist and simultaneously racist in the same breath. Otherwise, I've got nothing.
he is someone who has sided with racists in order to get a certain status.
Yep.
And so anybody who aligns themselves with the devils, what he's about to get, because it's coming. His day is coming in terms of experiencing racism and discrimination. It's coming, and it's going to be public.
I believe that if he runs for national office, he'll experience it. I believe the Republicans in South Carolina allow him to get that and take one for the team, so that it will help make them look better on the national stage. But I think that when he actually runs, he is going to truly face harsher penalties. And Gail said he said discrimination, but not racism. Possibly, but again, the fact that his grandfather was denied the opportunity to learn how to read is a clear indication of American
most
racism.
Of the time, discrimination is racist.
Right. He was just using semantics. You know who else used semantics? You don't know who this is, Jordan. This is a cartoon character from back in my day. His name is Mushmouth, and he was on Fat Albert. But he really, to me, looks like a cartoon depiction of a man before his time. Now, I'm not saying that he looks like him. But I'm kind of saying that he looks like him. And so I don't know where Senator Tim Scott's career will go. But I'm excited to see what the Republican Party will do with him in the years to come. I would love to see him run for president of the United States of America. I would love to see Daniel Cameron also try to go in for higher office. And I would love to see them both learn what America really thinks of them and what the Republican Party really thinks of them.
They're going to get him.
So
Absolutely.
The best of us represents, you're right, Laquita, he does. The last thing we talk about, Jordan, is the best of us. And that represents like truly that person or that thing which transcends expectations. And this week's The Best of Us goes to the Kansas City Women's Soccer League, who came out for their home opener wearing shirts that said "Justice for Dante Wright."
Absolutely.
And taking a huge stand in Missouri, a very Republican conservative state that is doubling down on fighting against abolishing or defunding the police, doubling down against recognizing that police brutality is a problem, doubling down against almost all of the concepts of the progressive movement. And for these young ladies to do that, it took a lot of courage.
Yeah. And I applaud them.
Yeah, I do too. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
And your generation, these are your generation, taking a stance and saying, I don't care if you don't like this and you think I should just kick a ball and shut up. We're going to take a stance against police brutality, against what else? Racism.
Right. They're taking a stance against
white supremacy.
Right. They're fighting with their activism. Yeah. And that's what makes us so
this is a predominantly white sport.
Yeah.
And
these are white women.
And that's why I also appreciated the MLB for taking a stance, not coming to Atlanta and playing in the All-Star game. Because look,
you got to hit them.
I think I also think white people need to take a stance like this to show white people.
Yeah, you got to
affect our communities.
It's bigger than any one person or even one group. It's all of us being impacted as a nation. And again, to see these young women do that, it took courage. And again, they're risk. People say, I've had people say, well, I can't say anything because I might lose my job. And so, I'm not talking about you.
I've been one of them.
I'm not talking about her.
Like, I can't talk about this topic.
But these young women have spent their whole lives preparing for that job. To be a professional athlete, you train your whole life to do that. And they're willing to take a stance because this issue means more to them than all that work. Tommy Tuberville is trash. I have heard about that. I question the whole NFL, but I certainly
I think they need to stop playing.
Right.
And go to my friend's franchise league and play for them.
So, Jordan, that kind of wraps us up. Do you have any questions for us?
Oh, I didn't come with questions. Let me think. What's one piece of advice you would give young aspiring activists? What's one thing you would say if you could say anything?
I would say three things. Number one, I would say you need to make sure that you find your balance so that you don't lose your footing. Your mental health and well-being is just as important as the lives that you're fighting for. Don't lose your life in the process of fighting for the rights of other people. And so you have to protect your mental space. You have to protect your heart space, and you have to cultivate that. You have to create some rituals and routines that are going to be sacred for you. For me, it's journaling, it's my affirmations, and it's really just saying when I'm feeling anxious from the news and from scrolling and from constantly absorbing this, I have to stop and pull away and just take a break, and it's okay to do that. That's number one. Number two is that you need to make sure that you find things that are going to restore you in the work, and it's not all on you. This is a whole entire community. So there are people, I hate to say that, I'm going to say it. Ben Crump is a multi-millionaire from the work he does in the Black trauma community. I know, and so I try to say it as best as I can say it. And I'm not saying anything necessarily negative about Ben Crump, but he's paid to do what he's doing.
Right.
You may not be getting any money right now to do this work. Doesn't mean, and to be fair, your work is probably more important than many of the people that are getting paid because you're doing it for your heart and your passion. Don't let that passion pursuit, take away from your economic viability. You have to eat, you have to live, but the financial money that you make, you are going to give it back to the community. You will find a way, and because money flows to you to flow through you, or at least that's my philosophy. The more money I give, the more money I get. The more money I donate and invest in the community and in people's lives, amazing, abundant things happen. And the third and final thing that I would say is to never lose your North Star, because I promise you this, in the same way that the devil went down to Tim Scott, this man, with whatever ambitions he had, with whatever education he had, he has been lost.
Right.
Daniel Cameron is a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. He grew up around Black people. He had a Black wife, Black in-laws, Black mother, and yet in CU defended the people that shot and killed Breonna Taylor. The same people that got to those Black men are going to come for you at some point in your life. And you're going to have to make a conscious decision to stand and live in your truth. And if you keep your North Star focused and pointed toward the Lord, Jordan, you will never stray from the path that you are meant to be on.
And the only piece of advice I would give you is to not forsake the wisdom of your elders. I did until I was in my late 30s, and then I lost my grandmother, and then my other grandmother has Alzheimer's. So I'm not able to get that wisdom that I so needed earlier in life.
Are your grandparents still alive?
I have one left.
So cherish that time.
Or just elders in general. How did you all deal with the 60s? Yeah. How did you all deal with X,
Me and my granny talk about it all the time. She's like my Black history. Every time I see her, she's got some new books, some new something, some new things for me to learn. She likes to give me Black History Month quizzes, which are great, except they're like super niche. She's like, who was the governor of North Carolina in 1965? And I'm like, Abuela, my love, I don't know. I'm so sorry. Please tell me, because I don't know off the top of my head.
But ask her, if you can get it on videotape, ask her about womanhood. Ask her about getting older. Ask her about communication, relationships, all that wisdom. I was lucky to get it on tape. I just wish that I listened sooner. Yeah.
And really just dug into the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's my favorite road trip buddy. Every time we drive, to her sister's house, which is a city over, but it's like an hour-long drive. We just talked the whole time.
Yeah.
She's one of my best friends. I love her.
Right. So that would be our advice. So Jordan, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Right, again, June 15th. You
June
will see
15th.
the familiar TikTok friends and faces.
Exciting.
So I'm excited, and thank you guys for joining us.
Thank
and
you,
we
everybody.
will see you next week.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining.
Bye.